Oh, it's that time. It's time for me to sit here and talk to you guys about comic books. You know, I like to do a lot of different things. I love to collect a whole bunch of things. And I also am very active with a lot of other things in my life that I like to do. I like to go fishing. I like to go metal detecting. I like to do a lot of different things. But as you guys know, most of you guys know, I like to dive deep into the hobby. So I'm a collector of all things. I collect toys, I collect comic books, coins, sports cards, action figures, art, very, very amazing, hard to find items that you just never ever have a chance to find or see in person. I love to collect that kind of stuff. And so whenever I do all those things, I feel it necessary to just dive deep and gain as much knowledge as I possibly can with everything that I like to do. So whenever I do that, I just research. I go after it, and I talk to people in the know, and I go and I verify all the sources of information out there, and just with time, I gain all this knowledge. And what I like to do is share that knowledge whenever I can. And so, one of those topics that I wanted to get into, one of the most common things to comic book collecting is the discussion of grading comic books. A lot of collectors that are in the hobby, they aren't as they aren't as in the know with that. So what happens is they send off their books to get graded with third-party companies: CGC, CBCS, PGX, Halo. I believe there's a new one now. There's several options, and people will send their books off to get graded so that they have that outside source opinion that most of the hobby actually will accept as a grading standard. So I have a couple of examples. So this is a CGC slab. This is a CGC graded 9.4. It has white pages. Generally, there's going to be a few flaws to the book. That's going to be the reason that it doesn't go higher than a 9.4. At first glance, I can already see several reasons this book would not go to a 9.8. One of those reasons being that there's lots and lots of feathering along the spine edge. And I think you guys might be able to see it, but it's all down here. You can see kind of a white area along the spine edge. The other thing that you can see on the back, there's some buffing along the cover. It's a color rub along the spine as well, right next to one of the staples right there. You can see it. So those couple of things is what's going to keep the book away from getting higher grades. Even if you go with the norm now, which is getting books cleaned and pressed, it will not matter, because those are things that cannot be repaired. Well, repairing is the wrong word to use there, but those are things that cannot actually be improved upon with either a cleaning or a pressing. So it's going to stay at that range. This is a PGX slab. This is slab graded at a 9.8. Now, generally, I will tell you guys that, and I've done a video discussing this before, when you are grading your books, sending them off to a third-party company, you want to generally use the top two, which is CBCS and CGC. CGC has been around the longest, and they are the most recognized amongst collectors. That being the case, they tend to hold just slightly more value than anybody else. PGX is the third most established, but they have had lots of issues through the years, which has really, really impacted the value of their slabs. So you really want them as a last option if you are just wanting another outside opinion or you want to have your books protected, it's a good option, but it's not the best by any stretch. So this one being a 9.8, 9.8 slabs of any company, it's very, very easy and instantly determined whether or not that is a 9.8, because there's going to be some obvious flaws that are going to keep it from being a 9.8. And believe it or not, from what I can see through the slab, now again, that's not a way to grade books, but from what I can see on this slab, there's actually no reason that I can see right off that this book would not hit a 9.6 to 9.8, even with being at a CGC or CBCS grading facility. So I do not see any major spine ticks. I do not see any blunted corners. This book's very, very sharp. So good on old PGX for actually getting one right, if you will. But again, slabbing is only a part of the collecting community. A lot of collectors still believe in keeping their books raw. And what I mean by raw is, very simply stated, non-slabbed raw comic book. So it's in its purest form. You can get it out at any time. You can read the book. You can enjoy the comic book, which is what it was meant to be. Nowadays, with the introduction of all of the movies, the TV shows, the merchandising, Disney getting into the game, as well as a lot of other big corporations jumping in and trying to get their piece of the pie, it has become more of an investment. It's less of a hobby to enjoy and read and just be a part of the art and everything that's the experience of comic books, and more into the actual investing aspect of it, because there's actually big time money investing firms and things like that even actually talk about put a portfolio together and have some of this type of things in it. I mean, that's the crazy thing. Comic books have become a major investing opportunity. And I remember I would say it's been about 6-7 years ago, comic books were on their way out. I mean, they were getting to a point where comic books were very, very low. I mean, they were just tanking. All the titles coming out were having a hard time selling. Collectors were not super into them. You had to be a hardcore collector, fan of comic books to really still want to be in the hobby. And so it has taken a completely drastic change, and now you will find massive amount of collectors jumping in, new people, new blood to the hobby, which is a cool thing. But with that comes the difficulties of learning what to do with your collecting. And so when you look at a comic book in its raw form, it is one of the worst things to do when you're doing that, when you're buying from somebody, is to just look at the cover and go, oh yeah, that's a pretty sharp book, because you do not know what's happening on the backside. One of the worst things that I see happen is, yeah, this book's about a 7.5 copy. And that's how they're grading it, right there. Nothing else. So sellers will go, that's a 7.5 copies. Pretty sharp looking book. There's low minor wear on it, and that's it. Well, as a collector, you need to know what's happening on the back side and on the front, on the inside of this book. So when you're grading a comic book, there's a few tools that you want to have at your disposal. And I'm going to show you what those tools are. First, you need a pen. Second, you need a pad. Simple pad. Third, grab yourself a blacklight. Another tool, a ruler. I didn't bring mine with me today. I was looking for it. I misplaced it. But a ruler is a great one, and I'll get into that, why you need that here in a second. Another great tool, the owl card. Overstreet's witness level color scale. So this one I'll talk about here in a second. And then finally, another great tool. Guide to Grading Comics. This is Overstreet's guide. Overstreet is one of the most well-established, well-known tools in all of comic book collecting. It is just an amazing tool with a lot of information in it for the collector. Gives you pictures, gives you a rundown of what makes a grade a certain grade, and it's just amazing. So you can obviously get the grading scale on the internet. Everything's available at your fingertips when you're on the internet. So you can get the 10-point grading scale. It will tell you what the rundown is for each grade. So at 9.8, it'll tell you how many flaws are allowed in the book. So we get back to this book right here. I showed it to you. I showed you through the page, or the bag and board. Now I'm looking at the front. It's outside of the bag and board, and right away I spot a flaw that I didn't see inside the bag and board. Right there, this nick. Now that doesn't necessarily it's not going to drop it so substantially out of the 7.5 range. Same thing with the back. The back is very sharp. You might need a small cleaning to really bring the white back and pop, but there's still nothing. So you want to continue on, and obviously I'm handling this book. There's a couple of reasons why. I always go and wash my hands thoroughly with soap and water before I start handling my books. Now, I will tell you, that only works for a short time, because the longer you're handling books, the longer time goes since you've washed and everything on your hands. The oils naturally come back on your hands, on your fingertips, and you can transfer that to these older books very easy. So white cotton gloves work great in handling especially super high dollar books. You want to do that just so you don't transfer those oils or risk excuse me, putting those fingerprints onto your books, because it can happen. So we've looked at the front, we've looked at the back. There's no obvious glaring flaws, no spine splits, which is very clean along the spine, as you can see. No major splits. Okay, so we're looking good there. Then I will actually lay my book down flat, and I will start going through and look at the front cover. I'll look at the front page, and I'll start going every single page from there to make sure there's no rips, there's no writing, there's no cutouts. Those are the three main things to look for. There are other things you want to look for, and I'll get into those. But those are the main things you want to look for when checking your internal parts of your comic books. Now, based on what you're collecting, how you're collecting, if you're a purist, you want the books raw like this, you obviously want to look at what you're picking up as far as the comic book goes. If you're looking for nothing but first appearances and key issues, then you have to determine whether or not you're fine with lower grades, or if you are looking for high grades for a premium collection. Higher grades of keys and first appearances, number one issues, things of that nature, they're going to run you obviously quite a bit more, especially in the older books, because when you get into the older comic books, they are much, much harder to find in high grades. Generally, anything Silver Age to Golden Age is going to be just a big difference in price once you start going up the half grades at a time to the 9.8. I mean, you're talking jumping thousands when you're into #1 issues of a major character. So, determine what you're looking to do. If you're accepting the lower grade so that you have the book for your collection, totally fine. It's a choice that you can go with, and you'll be happy with owning it. And then eventually down the line, when you come across another copy, maybe you can use that lower grade to trade towards the better grade and add some money to get that book. A lot of collectors will do that. So this book has no internal flaws. There's no writing. There's no cutouts. There's no tears. It actually is a very sharp book. So sitting at the flaws that it has, I can go in here, pad and pen comes into play. I count up how many flaws there are, and then I go to the internal scale. If you guys will give me a second, I always forget what page it's on, but there is a scale in here that will actually show you just how many flaws you are allowed at each grade. Now that helps out, and I will tell you this, guys, it is all opinion. It is based on a scale that was set in place that most of the collectors, they will accept and use themselves. But you can move one way or another slightly based on certain conditions of the book. So if there's very, very bright, vibrant colors on the book itself, like the inks are just popping, and there's heavy gloss, and you know it's a much older book, that will actually impact the grade positively versus a few extra spine ticks, things of that nature. I know that's kind of, you know, silly and gets into a different part of the grading spectrum and everything else, but it truly does play an impact for what you're looking at. Because collectors will pay a premium for a much brighter, much heavier gloss book than they will on one that's real beat down, basically. Sorry guys, still trying to find the scale here. Of course, that's the way it should work. I should have had it tagged before I jumped on, right? While I'm looking for that, though, I can actually point out the owl grading card again. And this actually has, it has the scale on it. So perfect 10 has to be white. So that means no off-white on the internal, on the inside of the covers. The pages have to be white. The off-white to white can be in the 8 to 9 range. And then tan is 5 to 7 range. Brown is 1 to 4. And brittle, assigned a score of 0 regardless of color. Again, the brittle, they're going to be like, a no grade has to be, I mean, just destroyed practically. So you're going to get about a 0.5 grade most likely when it comes to the brittle. I know they say no 0, but it's not always going to happen there. So mint, this gives you on the back, you've got some information on the back of the card as well. Mint would be a high 100 numerical grade, which the center is 99, low is 98. Point spread of 3, near mint point spread of 8, so 97, 94, 90. Very fine point spread of 15. It shows each one, it tells you on the back different ranges and different things like that. So this is, again, a great tool to have alongside your Overstreet grading guide, because if you have both of those tools together, it will absolutely help you pinpoint what you're trying to do and the number of flaws that you can actually accumulate to get certain grade ranges. So that'll help you better pick out what you're looking to buy and things like that. And I tell everybody, never, ever buy a comic book without pulling it out of the bag and board to look at it. I don't care if that book is $100,000 or $5. If you want to make sure that you're getting what you paid for, you need to check the insides and the outsides of the book, both front and back. If a seller has a problem letting you do that in a controlled condition, if it's a $100,000 book, if they have a problem with it, then just walk away. Because anybody that expects you to buy a book at that level and not be able to see it, that's like buying a car and not being able to look it over fully. You just get to look at it at a picture and that's it. You can't look at the interior, you can't look under the hood, you can't, I mean, you could be walking out of there buying a car that doesn't even have an engine in it. So my point being is always look at what you're buying. If you are with a seller that is very trusted for you, you've never been done wrong, and they can sell you books without any kind of issues on a regular basis, and you've grown to trust them, by all means, make sure you build that relationship and you can trust them. But I still say, ask for pictures, because you just never know what's going to be happening, what you're going to be buying. So it is very, very important to do that. Grading comic books has become very, very important. And well, of course, I can't say it's been very, very important for just a recent time frame, because it's always been a major aspect. It's actually the exact reason that CGC came about. It's because there was such bad, shady dealings going on that they ended up creating a grading company, a third-party grading company with industry experts to help collectors get away from getting taken advantage of. So here's the scale. All right, finally found it. So this scale right here will show you your grade ranges and how many defects are allowed to be had. So for example, you can have like a fine with a max defect. You go from fine and you jump up, and your max defects number is 11. Actually, I'm sorry, it's 12. So your max defect number is 12. Your minimum is a 6. So you've got to look at your book and actually literally count it up, how many flaws you have. There's a small bend right there. There's the nick on the side. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 spine ticks. So I'm at 1, 2, 3, there's 9 total there. On the back there's a bend, and then of course we already had the spine. There's a small split. So I'm at 11 flaws on this book. I already looked through the internals and there was nothing major. Then I would grab my owl card, boom, and I'd confirm and compare with the color of the actual pages themselves to see what it is that the color is. So it's going to be a off-white to white on the actual color. So I know I could never get higher than a 9 on this book. Well, if it was perfect, I could get probably a 9.2 or something like that. But I have about 11 to 12 flaws on this book. Coloring is good. So we already know that I can have a fine range on this book. So actually I can get up to, I can get it right at a fine plus. So I can have a fine plus on this book just by what I did with my breakdown. Black light. So the black light is in play to check for color touch. A lot of the older comic books, especially Golden Age, can have color touch. On these really dark black areas is the most common. Now I'm colorblind, so not fully, but color touch stands out like nobody's business for me. I can spot it like that. But most people don't have that luxury, so you want to use a black light. And when you run your black light over, it will show up because the differences in the ink are going to stand out. So you're going to shine your black light around all those areas, and clearly this one does not have any color touch, so that's a nice thing, and you would move on. Then you can know for sure whether or not there was any kind of color touch and things like that. Color touch is restoration. It drops the value of your comic book. Another thing that you're looking for is page count. Always, always look at the page count of your books. Most of them aren't going to be missing a page, but again, if it's a key book, you want to go in ahead of time knowing how many pages are expected to be in that book. Count the front and back covers in the page count. So again, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's how you're going to do it. And that goes all the way to the back. Final page. 1, 2. So that's how you're going to count it all the way through, so you get your page count. Then you can jump online. You can check different sources to find out how many pages are expected in that book. The other thing you want to do is measure. So you can actually, again, use the internet to get you that baseline of dimensions for the book. So a general thing you can do is basic measurements for Silver Age comic book. And it'll come up with something and tell you a roundabout measurement overall of what that book's supposed to be. Because you're looking for trimming. A lot of experts actually will miss trimming, and I've actually seen comic books that came right off the stand, never left a collection, and they sent it in, and because the production quality was a little lesser back in the day and the blades were a little dull, it would actually put a different type of an edge to where it looked trimmed, and when they got it graded, it came back as trimmed. So they would just simply crack the book out, contact CGC or CBCS, and be like, "Look, I bought this. Here's the whole history of this book, and it was never trimmed." And they would do what they had to do from there. But a lot of times it's just they crack it out and they keep it raw because they don't want a trim book, which it wasn't, so they don't want that. But trimming is one of the easiest things to miss because of the bad process of cutting the books back in the day. The blades would get dull, it would leave frayed edges, things of that nature. So what I'm going to teach you now is a quick way to kind of help you determine if a book was trimmed or not. One of the first things I always do is I look at each one of the edges. What you're looking for is actually non-perfections. You're looking for perfection or you're looking at the book to see if it's perfectly trimmed and flat, because the process was not perfect back in the day. You're going to be looking at each area on each level along the side. You should actually see almost peaks and valleys. You should see it go up at times and lower at times. Same thing on each and every edge. So I can clearly show this one as a lot easier sample. Let's see if you guys can see that. You can see it along the edge here, and it'll actually go to a point and then flatten out again. That is a clear indicator of a non-trimmed book. Here's another one. There's a perfect example. I think you guys might be able to see that. And it is, again, you could see it goes to a pitch right here in the middle of the meat of these pages. It goes into a pitch. I hope you guys can see that. But if you see that the book is completely flat, it is going to be one of those things you want to break out your ruler and measure it out, because it's a strong possibility the book might have been trimmed. The other thing to look for is that the edges of the book is almost just even, and there's not like this crazy white exposure, because this is a Silver Age book. Well, this one's 1972, so it's actually going to be Bronze Age, but if it was to be trimmed right now, the difference in the color on the edge here versus here would be a lot more noticeable. This would be much whiter than up here. This is almost like aged perfectly, and so it would be very obvious. The other thing, you can check this side and see how jagged and rough the edge is here. So there's a couple little telltale signs for you guys. You're not going to be an expert overnight with grading. There's always a little bit lean to the left or right of the grading scales based on the overall condition, and based on how rare it is to find them in better shape, and based on the age. If it's a modern book, that swing is very minuscule. I mean, you should not have more than 1, 2 minor flaws for like a 9.8. If you're seeing 3, 4, 5 flaws on a 9.8, it's not a 9.8, and I don't care what anybody says. That book should never hit 9.8 once you pass a certain level of flaws. So just hope that all helps you out, guys. Hope all the information went through okay, and I didn't go too overboard with it, because I really want to help you guys know what to look for, know how to spot the things for betterment of your collection. So once we're on the right path, you guys can actually go out and buy a book and know whether or not it is a good deal or a bad deal, things of that nature. So the other thing I wanted to get into today, I'm not going to spend a whole bunch of time on it, but I like to show off some books that I've picked up maybe recently, or that are some of my favorite covers, things of that nature. So here's some of my books that I've picked up recently, and also favorite covers. So here's one, classic Green Lantern number 89, just a crazy cover. You got Green Arrow and Green Lantern both being held back as they're, basically crucifying this guy right here. Just crazy. Then you got Showcase Presents Tommy Tomorrow. Very underrated title. Love the stories, love the comics, and they have some of the classic covers. I mean, you've got the dragon on the cover there, so that's always cool. And then we get into some more epic Silver Age. And you'll notice a theme with me. I do prefer older comic books over the new stuff. Not to say I don't go and collect new stuff, but the older versus modern, I go with the older every time. There's a couple reasons for that. One of the main reasons is the stories and the art just always appealed to me much more. I mean, you got just such greatness happening on the cover there that you just want to break that thing out and start reading it. Even an Avenger can die. I mean, that right there, when I was a kid and I was looking for comic books on the stand or at a flea market or a shop or whatever, I would be looking at the covers and go, oh my god, what's happening here? Why is there actually gonna be an Avenger that dies in this issue? And I'd buy it, Another cool one, House of Secrets 35, Interplanetary target. So you know there's aliens after this dude. Why? I don't know, but I want to check that out, right? The other thing is to, when you guys are buying comic books, the older they are, the harder they are to find. They're more rare, they're more sought after, especially in solid grades. So mid grades and higher, just great. Not to say don't grab your lower grades, because sometimes that's what you have to settle for when you're buying a comic book. But if you're wanting to read some awesome stuff, go with the older stuff. The art is amazing. And these early pre-100 issues of like House of Secrets and stuff, just so hard to find. House of Mystery, another great title. I mean, The Secret of Mr. Doom, number 124. Just awesome. Back to another amazing classic cover for the Avengers. Avengers number 20. Captain America, what's happening with Captain America? Is he about to die? We don't know, but we'll watch. Special note to art lovers. Wait till you see the wonderful Wally Woods inking of Don's drawings in this great issue. So that's another thing that's cool about this book. Avengers number 7, Their Darkest Hour, in which the mighty Avengers battle among themselves with the Enchantress, the Executioner, and evil Zemo waiting to pick up the spoils. So I'm already going to see some epic action adventure in this issue, and I get to find out why is it they're fighting against each other. I mean, that's the coolest stuff ever, right? And then I've always liked Submariner as a character. I thought he was one of the most underrated characters. He's one of the longest running villains slash anti-heroes, and just a cool character. And to see the Avengers showing up and fighting Submariner again after all the years in this issue, it's awesome, man. Then we get into the differences. I like the older stuff, the stories, the art, the story that the cover tells on itself. Then you jump into the modern stuff where it's all about profiles. I call them glamour shots. Just the almost like a painting. You know, it's really high quality digitalized art and things like that. Nothing wrong with it. Anybody can collect comic books their way. Whatever appeals to you, that's what you go for. Don't overthink it. If it looks awesome to you, then grab it. There's a bloody variant, and then you've got the standard virgin cover there. So, awesome stuff. Right back into another amazing comic. So, Teen Titans, right? Number 26, introducing the new Teen Titans. So, definitely cool. But then I see right on the cover, Green Lantern battling with Superman, and Superman saying, dude, you're gonna kill me. What's up, bro? Stop it. I gotta read that issue, right? And then finally, I get back into a crazy cool variant issue right there. The reason I pulled this one that I like to show off is I think that Adi Granov is a very talented artist that started all this ultra realistic type art, a while back, before guys like Dell'Otto and Perio and people like that got into doing it. Adi Granov was one of the first. So if you have a chance, pick up some of his stuff. He has amazing art. So those are types of things that I enjoy and I like to pick up. I say do your collecting the way you want to do it. Always be mindful of how you want to do your collection, build it up. If you want to grab runs, if you want to grab keys, first appearances, number ones, things of that nature, go after it. Just be happy with what you have. Don't ever go into it thinking that, I'm doing this the wrong way, I can't collect right. Do it your way. Enjoy the whole process. Enjoy grabbing your books, sitting down and reading them. sharing them with your kids if you have any. Just get into the hobby for what it was meant to be, and that's the fun, the joy, the escape to other realities, the seeing the stories come to life, things of that nature. Because if you do it the right way, you're truly going to enjoy it, and you won't care about the value as much as you care about the precious memories that it brings to you. People have learned to read because of comic books, or read more. They've learned to read better because of comic books. People have learned how to draw because of comic books. There's a lot of benefits to actually having comic books. So if it's not for you and you want to do it with your kids, so be it. Enjoy it. Don't hold back because you're worried that it's a mega book and you're gonna get hurt, you're gonna damage it or whatever. Read them. I've read just about every book I've ever owned, at least the majority of it, and it didn't matter if it was a major key or not. So enjoy the fun, get out there, and have some fun collecting. And before I go, I want to point out a couple things to invest in if you're looking at it that way and you want to buy a book that's lower, and now you can take advantage of that before it shoots up in price again. I know a lot of you guys have asked about that and what you should get. So Swamp Thing #1, 1972 solo issue, the #1, not his first appearance, but the #1, Swamp Thing #1 from 1972. That is a great book that has dropped in value, that will always have a good, healthy value to it, and would be a great book for your collection. With time, it's going to go up. It's always going to be a very cool character that a lot of people love. So if you want to have a great story, amazing art, and a book with value that's going to hold long-term value, Swamp Thing #1 solo issue from 1972 is one to grab for now, because it's very reasonably priced. The other one to grab, this one's going to set you back, but it has dropped in value for right now because it's fallen out of the spotlight a little bit. That is Amazing Spider-Man #2, first appearance of the Vulture and third appearance of Spider-Man. All Spider-Man issues pre-100 are of great value to collectors. If you get the major main villains, you're doing awesome. That is one that's a long-time classic villain, and it's the third appearance of Spider-Man, so it's not going to just drop off the cliff with value. It is going to hold a very, very long-time value and continue to climb with time as well, because there's not a ton of those copies out there, and when they pop up, they're generally sought after. So that's a great one to grab right now. Let's see, another one, the final thought or tip for you guys as far as books to grab for now. Marvel Preview Presents #2. It is the first origin of Punisher. It's a nice key book, and if you're a fan of Punisher, it's a must-have. So it's not a super expensive book, but it has maintained value for a very long time, and it's a classic story. So grab that one. Marvel Preview Presents #2, Origin of the Punisher. That is it for me, guys. Just go out and love those comic books. Enjoy the hobby. Share it with your kids or young ones around you. Have fun. That's the most important thing. I will finally sign off by saying, if you are really looking to pick up some amazing comic books each and every week on my Twitch channel, I actually have auctions where I roll live every Wednesday and Friday night at 8:30 Central Time. I put up amazing books all the way back to the Platinum era, and up to modern. So you can find just about anything each and every week. If you want to join the fun, I'm rolling live every week. I will put my my link in the comment sections. Please make sure you like the video and subscribe if you feel like it. But I really do thank you guys so very much for hanging out with me today. And you know what? Everybody have a great one, and peace out.